So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Online Entrepreneur Academy podcast, where we have a lot of amazing guests with different areas of expertise, change in jobs and skills, and combining different backgrounds. So, my huge pleasure to welcome Catherine Daley. So, let me hand over to you, Catherine, to introduce yourself and what you're currently working on and learning about.
Oh, hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Catherine, and I am doing several things at the moment. And one of the things I decided earlier in 2025 was that I wanted to make a more tangible step towards the situation with the climate and the planet. And it wasn't out of the blue. I've spent quite a lot of time educating myself and understanding what's going on and what might be possible. But basically, I decided I wanted to set up what's called a carbon dioxide removal company. And I didn't even know this was a possibility. But basically, there's different, using technology in nature, there's different ways that we can positively remove excess carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and get it back into the ground, so reversing the effect of burning fossil fuels. And this filled me with great hope. And I don't want to get too caught up in my whys and wherefores, but I decided that maybe I could do this myself. I could set up a carbon removal business, and I could do it based on there's several technologies, which is called biochar. And it's making biochar, which is basically capturing carbon that trees and plants make, and instead of it going back into the soil and breaking down, it's keeping it in a carbonized form, a very durable form of carbon. So that is what I'm up to. And alongside that, I also want to set up a business that is not adding to the destruction and the extraction of what's going on in the world as well. So how do I do that? And I've been holding this question of how can a business be regenerative, not fully understanding what regenerative means, but appealing to me that it's about restoring, putting something back, if you're doing something with something, you're leaving it in a much better place. So I used to be a climber, and one of the ethoses we had was leave no marks. And I'm going, I don't want to not leave marks. I actually want to have done, but through my presence, have being in this space, how can it somehow have added something to the local ecosystem? I didn't know what that was when I was back in my 20s climbing up lumps of rock around England and Wales. But it's the same thing now. It's not enough just to not leave footprints. It's how can I leave a positive footprint that somehow creates some positive benefit. So that is what I'm trying to do with my business as well. Yes, it's a climate business, so already it is having an impact. But this idea of being a regenerative business, I understand can be applied to any business. And I think this is where what we've been talking a bit about, Susan.
Mhm.
And so the other bit is when you're starting a startup, you also have to carry on doing your day job, of which I have a couple, because I still need to sustain myself. And when I'm not looking at setting up this climate business, which is basically it's production, it's a manufacturing company, I carry on doing my work as a coach and a facilitator and as a trainer. But I'm ever more going down the how do I do that regeneratively and how can I weave regenerative approaches into what I'm doing? And that is happening. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm up to as well. So it can be a little confusing if you meet me sometimes because I might be talking about, oh, I've just been working with one of my clients doing some kind of I specialize in neurodiversity coaching. So lots of my clients are neurodivergent in the workplace. So you might hear me talking about ADHD and autism and dyslexia and stuff, which is yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
I
little about what I'm up to. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes. And I think a lot of people are worried about what they're doing apparently different things, but they do, as you suggest, they do all come together. And it is important to keep the day job or the other streams going while we do.
Absolutely.
So how's that been? Has it been a struggle, or have you been able to delineate? How does that work out in terms of this is what I'm doing
Oh my
today?
goodness, it's been extraordinary actually. As I explore the possibilities of doing something for the planet, so setting up this carbon removal company, I keep being met with so much goodwill and generosity and offers of support from all kinds of arenas. And I've been introduced to all kinds of people. Spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody, and then I ended up having a conversation with the professor of soil science at Reading University. And it's like,
Amazing.
I didn't know that person even existed. And here's having a really, and then they offer something up. And the thing
Mhm.
they offer up is, oh, maybe some of my master's students can come and look at your pilot project that you're running and run some research projects. And I'm like, so that's an example of it, this sort of, and I think this is what regenerative means. I'm going to talk a bit more about it, but it brings life into the system. And this is what happens to me during the week. My energy levels tend to grow. I have my own weekend and I'm quite chill and I've had a nice time. Come Friday, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm full of energy. And sometimes I have to disperse it because it's good energy, but my work is still in my head. And I'm like, no, I just want to just have a break from what's in my head. Those kind of two things are happening. One, my own inner energy is somehow being nourished from what I'm doing. And
Great.
it's leading other people also to get energized around what I'm doing and offer to support me. So, and this week I've hunkered down. It's been like a week of, oh my God, it's winter. I just want to climb under the duvet. Maybe I'll just do some reading. I'm not in the mood for outreaching and things like that. So acknowledging that there's an ebb and flow. It's not like always go. There's some ebb and flow in that too.
I think the energy enthusiasm that you convey and other entrepreneurs convey is really catching, isn't it? And people get swept along and begin to understand different areas of business and life. So it's absolutely fabulous. So you did say then we're going to a bit more. So tell us a bit more about regeneration, because I guess people listening, watching will understand the word, but what does that actually mean? Can you dive a bit deeper for us?
I try to. What I did do is I Googled it and I went, oh, what is the actual definition of regeneration? And there's
Ah,
several, depends which dictionary you look at. But the
yeah.
nub of it is, how can you regrow, renew, or restore something, especially after it's been damaged or lost? And 300 years ago, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation because naturally, work on the whole, it wasn't too extractive, as in taking
True, yeah.
things, using them, and then disposing of them, which is, but now we are imbued in this sort of approach that we take stuff, use it, and then create loads of waste, and then we have a waste problem on our hands.
So true,
And
totally.
yeah, and it's just businesses are also designed in some way to do this. And not that I'm against that, I just understand it. And through this regenerative lens, you can go, how can I still do my work and it have a positive impact? And that's not necessarily just giving to charity or giving up time and volunteering. They are all really great things, or even recycling. Don't not recycle. But there's a sort of another bit, which is how can my work bring other things to life? And I'm very much towards restoring nature. But
Mhm.
other people could go, how can I restore my local community through the actions of my business existing? How can that come to life a bit more? So it's this idea of bringing things to life and much needed right now because of where we are at this moment in humanity and the world and all this. Yeah, I've really benefited from this thing called progress. I've had a great life. In many ways, I've got to visit the world. I've got to eat amazing food, see amazing places, work in amazing companies, meet amazing people, loads of things that
Yeah.
have arisen. And quite frankly, I'd quite like to keep doing those things, but can I do them without not harming the planet? But also, can I catch a plane? And through that plane flying through the air, it's somehow having a positive impact. That
Yeah,
would be
lovely.
amazing.
Wouldn't it just? Yes. And we're not talking, as you suggest, we're not talking about extremes and of giving up things. And it's, you said it perfectly. I don't need to rephrase that. And I noticed when I'm traveling as well, when I went to Greece, when I went to Sudan in Africa, much more consideration. And when you, as you were talking, I think, yes, a lot of their daily habits are regenerating. They're not just wasting and throwing things out. And yet, mobile phones, telephones, computers, whatever is still there as well. Interesting, very interesting. Now, you talked, I got a quote from when we talked before we started recording, was past experience informs current work. And you've touched on that, to be fair. But anything else you could add to that?
Oh
What
gosh,
I
yes. I said like this hasn't just come out a bolt from the blue. I am doing this work now as a result of all that kind of sits behind me. I don't want to add up too many years, but more than 30 years of
Yes.
higher education, further education. I did a degree, did a postgraduate. I didn't actually qualify because I got offered a job and I went, brilliant, I'd rather do the job than carry on doing my research. And yeah, began in the world of work. And I spent 20 years in manufacturing. I trained as a product designer. That is my background. I worked in manufacturing. So the fact that I'm setting up a manufacturing company now, having not been in manufacturing for 10, 15 years, is familiar to me. I understand how bits of metal can be arranged to do stuff, and you put something in one end and something else comes out at the other end, and it's fairly reliable, and that's what we want, and it's safe, and people don't get damaged in the doing of that, and it's a useful thing that comes through that process. There's that bit. I So then I transitioned, moved, no, you don't know. I moved from manufacturing. I worked for large corporate global companies with a global role. So I was jumping in planes and flying places in my role as product manager, was not compatible when I had children. So I
No.
stopped that work. Like many people do. You have
Mm.
children and you go, I want to be a mum, actually. I want to be
Yeah, I want
present
to
and raise my kids, be
full
there for
play.
them. Yeah, yeah, to all of those things, all of the bits that's involved in being a mum. And because of my familial situation, that was possible that I didn't need to work. I appreciate that's not the case for everybody, but this is my lived
Mm.
experience. And then I realized as I was raising my kids that by heck, my communication skills were pretty rocky. And I was relying on some rather Victorian approaches. And I went, there has to be another way. There has to be another. This is what prompted me to go more into the people side of relation.
We're losing the sound. When you adjusted your headphones, we lost the sound there.
Sorry, let me say
That's
this.
all right.
Was that?
Yeah, that's good. I can just edit it out. Don't worry. Yes. So I got it till you said communication skills, and then the sound disappeared.
Uh,
So pick it up from
So with
communication.
communication skills, and what I realized was that mine were somewhat lacking. There was scope for growth there. As ever, our kids are always showing and teaching at the showing where our gaps are for growth. And so this is what happened for me. And I went, let's do this work. How do I get better at being a mum and what's involved? And then I got into communications, which led me to be a coach, led me to be a facilitator and a
Right.
trainer. Because actually, another thing I really love doing is sharing information in an engaging and useful way. And this then ties into what I'm doing. I've have to have many conversations about what I'm up to now.
Yeah.
Because one, it's fairly novel. What is this thing called carbon removal? What is biochar? What's the multiple benefits of that? And two, what's this thing called regenerative? What am I up to? How do I talk about that? How do I explain it? Because as people come and start working in my company, I need to be able to let them know that we'll be doing things a little bit differently. However, it's not that different. And yes, it's taking all, and also my interest in nature. I've done
Mm.
loads of learning because it's just interesting to me. I've done all kinds of
Yeah.
sustainability courses and
Because
passion because
rewilding,
actually I was,
spotted on your LinkedIn profile, there was quite a lot about rewilding, which became a buzzword. And I
yeah,
wonder
and
how.
I've run what I would consider a very failed rewilding project. It didn't work. I didn't get the balance right, and it was a complete disaster. And actually, it was not, some ways it's worked, but other ways it wasn't sustainable. So I learned a bit about that with a bit of land. Yeah, so yeah, sustainability, rewilding, they're all here. So
Yeah.
people who know me, it does make a bit of sense that I would be doing this thing.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think the listeners, viewers can see how the strands come together because they're all such an important part of where you are now. Can we go in the direction before you said modeled on Patagonia? How does that work? Tell us about Patagonia.
so Patagonia is a place, but it's also a clothing brand. And it's a clothing
Yes.
brand that I know about from being a climber, because it was the
Ah,
go-to. It's a brand, and it's likely many of your listeners will know a bit about Patagonia, and that they had a
absolutely.
really strong ethos around this bit about don't leave no footprints when you've
Yeah.
been to a place is very much in the climbing world, which is where Patagonia came from. He was a climber and he wanted to develop better kit. And then how do I develop better kit without creating harm? And then his own internal values metamorphized,
And I
led
think very
to
well.
what Patagonia is today.
Right.
And Patagonia have just released actually their latest sustainability report. And in it, they're going, we're not sustainable at all because we're making still all the things they're doing in service to nature. But at the end of the day, there is still a deficit and nature is being damaged as a result of them being present, but perhaps less so than other clothing companies because they are
They're
taking
conscious.
steps to make sure
Mhm.
they're way more conscious in their supply chains and how people are treated and a fair wage and end of life and the repair of goods and all of those things. And something else that inspired me about Patagonia is that noting that this occurred after the family, it's a family-owned business, were very wealthy. They went, we don't need any more wealth. We're handing all our shares over to an organization that actually is in service to nature. So all the profits now go directly to nature, not to the family. People get paid for their work, of course,
Of course,
but any surplus profit now all goes to this foundation. I've forgotten the name of it. Somebody in the audience might be going, I know the name. It's that. I
you
can't
can put
put
it in
it
the
up.
show notes. It's
And
amazing.
so they're doing things like buying up chunks of Alaska to stop oil drilling on it because it's a huge amount of money they're getting every year from the profits
Yeah.
of this company. And taking that back to an everyday lived experience in my business and something I'm trying to do with my company being a regenerative business is can I take a bit of that and go, let's not wait till I'm super wealthy and then give all my profits to nature. Can I, in the setting up of my business, have something a bit like that? And it's a bit like a B Corp. They make a statement about giving some money back or doing some charitable work or volunteering and things like that. And I'm going, can I give, I don't know, 25% of my profits is going to be earmarked for nature projects, some shape or form. I'm going to build that in from the beginning.
That's
Something
great.
else I'm considering is, can I have nature on my board?
I was going to ask you
So
that
decision,
question.
yeah. How do business decisions get made with nature in mind? Because nature could have a voice, and much as I'd love to have an elephant or a tiger or a lizard sat on my board telling me stuff, it's not actually possible. A human has to represent nature's
Yes.
interest, but they can go, can you do that thing in a way that is positive for nature? So an example I can give, a company that has nature on their board. Some of your listeners might be familiar with them. It's called Faith in Nature. They make shampoo and soap products. They're based in Manchester and they have nature on their board. And a story I heard was that they've adopted this, giving nature a voice and nature being part of their decision-making process. And somebody in their product sourcing team went, we can get tea tree oil from this place, or we can get our current supplier, we can get our tea tree oil from this place where they're building wildlife corridors for koala bears. How
Wow.
about we get it from there? And they go, yeah, let's change
No
supplier.
brainer.
No brainer. And you feel it, you know it when it's a no brainer like that. So but that wasn't made at the board level. That was made at a junior buyer level, going, I need to find some alternative sources for tea tree oil. I found this company. What do you reckon? And
Yeah.
everybody goes, yeah, of course. It's
Oh,
penny. It might be 2 or 3 pence per whatever, more, or dollars or whatever. But overall, it's a better decision.
yeah, absolutely. I do. No, that's when you point it out, that's obvious. And I'm thinking, wow, we're doing that anyway. But we often miss as in having someone specifically the voice of nature and thinking outside the box. How can we do this better? Surely there's solutions. I think in schools let me just ask you about this because my kids went to a school where they quite sensibly said no plastic bottles, water bottles, and they had a water fountain. But then the next problem was, how do the kids drink? And that was a huge barrier. So this is my way of asking, lots of different angles have to be thought about, don't they? It's not just, let's just do that.
And
So,
this is part of being regenerative. And I'm still getting to grips with what it actually means to have a regenerative business and run regeneratively, because it's a system. It's like everything's related to everything else. So that idea to, let's say no to plastic bottles, because that sounds like a good thing to be doing, But the
Yeah.
knock-on effect of that is that maybe all those kids now have reusable bottles, but they
Bottles,
keep
yeah.
losing them, so they keep buying them. And actually, the materialization of creating and how
Yeah.
I still have 3 kids. They still use water bottles, and the numbers that just get lost or missed, or I end up with somebody else, and I'm like, it's not mine. I don't use it. But that's my own mindset. But the actual materialization of making a
Sturdy
the
water
end
bottle.
of life of those. Yeah, a sturdy water bottle, what happens at its end of life? Maybe it would just be better to actually use plastic water bottles and collect them and know that they go back into being water bottles. And
Yeah.
then they're in a circular thing. But it's a different kind of thinking. Yeah, there was a big pushback against plastic, and plastic in the right place, kept in the right place, is a brilliant material.
Mm.
Brilliant material. Just
Yeah.
ends up in the wrong place, then which is where it causes terrible damage. And yes, it also uses petrochemicals to make it, which probably is not so brilliant. But there's other ways to make it. Does
It's
that
just
kind of answer your question?
yeah, because thinking, someone listening can think, yes, that is reasonable. Even if we don't have a specific person, I can think with the nature hat on, a solopreneur, entrepreneur can still think how they are doing things rather than a rush decision, which ends up as a bad idea. And then there's that sense of we tried, but it failed. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It did answer the question. I'm going to ask about carbon credits because, yeah, I pretty much know what they are, but do I really know what they are? Can you talk through carbon credits for our audience? So how can they think about it? But it's not like a little, you don't put something in your money box, do you? Or maybe you do.
No, so let's take a step back. Again, this is where we are right now. We have I don't say this lightly, but we do have a climate emergency
Yeah.
occurring, and other people have their own relationship with that. And one of the things that we have is that we have excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And an example of that, when I was born, I think there were like 272 parts per million. Now in 2025, I think it's like 420 something. So it's gone up, doing my mental maths, 150 parts per
I've written it
million,
down.
something like that. And actually, we've exceeded what is a healthy level for the planet, which is around about 350, which is where my business company's name comes from. It's called Carbon 350 because I'm trying to get carbon dioxide levels of parts per million in the atmosphere back down to 350 because we've exceeded that by quite some. And ways, so there's two things that are going on side by side, and people will heard, but there's this decarbonizing. How do we decarbonize? How do I reduce my carbon footprint? How do I not use paper? So there's a kind of less bit to that. How do I use less of things?
Yeah.
Or how do I use renewable energy to power my stuff, my home, my equipment, whatever? Drive an electric vehicle. There's a big move towards electrification over burning. And we still need to power those electric vehicles, but by heck, the atmospheres are a bit clearer through not all the emissions that come from petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles. Of course, that still goes on. And so there's this thing of decarbonizing, but if we decarbonize, we still have too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So we have to do this positive thing of also which is the business I'm in, of removing excess carbon dioxide and then keep getting it back into the ground in a permanent, not gas form, but a solid form. And some companies are already doing this thing that they're both decarbonizing and then what's called offsetting what's remained. So they've gone, we've done everything we can, and we're still creating some carbon in what we're up to. And then that bit can then be offset in all kinds of ways. People are planting trees, they're renewing putting money into mangrove restoration, peatland restoration, through to what I'm up to, which is biochar, which is another way. And there's some more sort of technical ones, which is called direct air capture, where there's these filters that sit on the land, but basically got air going through them, sucking particles of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And this is the crazy thing, right, about carbon dioxide. We're talking about parts per million. There's 420 parts per million in a volume of air. That's not very many bits to be getting hold of and filter out. There's still too many, and hence the problem. And so carbon credits is a way to invest in projects that are somehow getting this carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and back into the ground. And they come from, I don't know all the numbers on this, but tree planting, you can pay £5 a tree or something. And that tree over 10 years might embody, oh my God, don't quote me on this. Anybody,
No,
again, if there's somebody currently
just
shouting and
relating.
got that wrong, let's call it 5 tons carbon
Yes.
dioxide. It might not be, it depends how big, over 10 years, a tree might not get to 5 tons in weight, but I'm just going to use it as an example. And now I've lost my thread. Why was I talking about that?
Planting the trees.
Planting trees. So yeah, £5 to plant a tree. Over 10 years, that tree might embody or remove 5 tons of carbon dioxide. It might not actually. I may have got the maths wrong there.
Yeah, but the idea is it goes back to that little step today down the line.
Absolutely. And also planting a tree is a brilliant thing because it's also adding to biodiversity. It's a place where other things live and it's cleaning water and they're beautiful. All of those things.
I have a garden full of trees and the nature in the trees is astounding, as you say.
Yeah. And if you think longer term, that tree will come to the end of its life, and trees are naturally part of the carbon cycle. For your science teachers in your listenership, you'll know all about this, or geographers. They will naturally release that carbon back into the atmosphere at their end of life because that's what goes on. So that's why they're quite cheap, lower price, because one, they're fairly easy. It's quite low cost.
Cheap. Low cost action is
to plant a tree, and that tree may or may not make it to maturity. It might not make it to 10 years, let alone 100 years, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And that at the end of its life, it's going to release all that carbon back into the atmosphere, which is why products like what I'm up to, where I take trees at the end of their life and I interrupt it so that carbon does not return to the atmosphere. We get hold of it and make this special stuff called biochar, which locks the carbon into this char, and then the char goes into the ground where it has a positive effect on soil health. However, biochar, just to keep with the carbon credit, in terms of buying a ton equivalent of carbon from biochar, it's £200 a ton versus maybe £50 a ton for planting trees. So economically, it's a different thing, but I'm offering very durable carbon removal, whereas tree planting, I'm not knocking. I really hope you understand that's super important that we plant trees and mangroves, all of those things. Things can happen to them where they might release their carbon unexpectedly. So there could be a fire. Yeah, they might get eaten by a passing deer, or they might get burnt when they're a bit older because there's been a forest fire or something else might happen. And the direct air capture carbon credits, they're like £900 a ton.
Wow.
So it's just to give a little scope of carbon credits.
So tell us about tell us about biochar. So what does say I want to buy some biochar, what am I going to do with it? Is it more for companies, for individuals, or anyone?
Anyone can have a relationship with biochar. If you're a gardener, then that might be a direct way that you might have an interest in biochar because it has multiple benefits from being in the soil.
Right.
And you might be interested in it if you've got a garden or planting a tree. If you're planting a tree, if you put some biochar in the hole with the roots, there's scientific research around this, that helps that tree be more resilient. Because by the presence of the biochar there, I don't know how much of a science lesson you want. I'll try and give a brief overview.
Yes, for the non-expert.
Yeah, so biochar, for people trying to imagine what biochar is, it's like a charcoal. It's a specially designed, charcoal's designed to be burnt. It's designed to be created as a fuel and then be burnt. Biochar is created not to be a fuel. It's created to be either a soil, go into the soil, or be used as a water filter. Various other, it's got multiple end uses actually, but not be burnt because otherwise it's releasing the carbon and defeats the whole object.
Absolutely.
But people who are familiar with charcoal know it's quite light. When you pick it up, it's light.
Yeah, isn't it?
And It's also highly porous. So biochar is super porous, and with that porosity comes an ability to absorb water. So up to 20 times its weight in water can get taken into the biochar, and then it slowly releases it. So it slows down. It's like a sponge in effect, although it's not squashy like a sponge. Acts like a sponge. The porosity, that those little air pockets in it also act as spaces where bacteria and soil microbes can live. So it's like a housing estate for soil microbes. And then it's also got some kind of chemical charge to it that then has a chemical effect of the nutrients and the like potassium and, oh, now my brain's gone dead and it can't give me any phosphorus and things. Nitrogen is one of the key ones, has what's known as a cationic effect on those. So it's locking those into the soil as well. So it's got multiple benefits.
It's not my take.
Yeah, I know. And it also, if you put it in raw into your soil, it does a bit of a nutrient grab because it's so porous, it sucks in local nutrients. So you don't tend just to put it naked into the soil. It's a good idea to have composted it. So if you've got a compost heap, you can take a shovel full of biochar and chuck that in, and then put a bit more on the top, and then chuck another layer of shovel full of raw biochar. And then when your compost heap's done its composting thing, it's permanently there, and then you put it in your soil, so it's all charged up with all the nutrients that were in the compost. It's begun to absorb those already and been part of the decomposition. It also helps with methane emissions and lowers those because compost does produce methane.
Yeah, I noticed.
Then you're putting all that goodness into the soil, and then the biochar stays in your soil, having a continued positive effects around water retention, like all the things I just spoke about.
Yeah, that's amazing. So gardeners, people have allotments and obviously multiple uses from what you've just said.
Yeah, and then you can scale that out to horticulture, to agriculture, it's been used in land reclamation in Ukraine because it can also help with deeply damaged soils and balancing those out. So yeah, it's a pretty cool product.
It is, and I feel very privileged to be able to hear about it right now before the whole world is talking about it, which won't be long. No, that's seriously, well, thank you very much for explaining it. Now, we've talked about quite a few things about the legal innovation, having nature as a partner, about regeneration. I just wanted to touch on, because you mentioned a leadership program that you went on that was very helpful. So where can we learn about regeneration? Is it in the leadership program to put it in our companies? What would you say about that for our audience?
If you're interested, there are books about it. So for sure, Google regeneration or regenerative leadership, and there's several.
I saw the
thousands of books.
Yeah, it's the care economies one, isn't it? That I saw.
Oh, care economy. Oh my goodness, that is a read and a half. Yes. There's regenerative leadership. Yeah, there's books. There's not many books, but there are books, but they give you a feel. And some come from a reconnect with nature in your own inner nature. Go and spend time out in nature, know who you are. So it very much comes from a place of your own relationship with yourself and nature. And if that is a lovely way to be, and that could be the opening point for somebody to go, oh yeah, I want to take that approach. There's a program I've just done which takes regenerative living systems approaches, how nature actually behaves, and using those as a way, as a metaphors and models for how a company operates. And so never was there an invitation to go and sit with a tree in that training. However, how trees work and communicate was a bit of a metaphor because of the mycelium and communication and information flowing. And you can connect with me if you're interested. I'm happy to have conversations about it.
And of course, let's remind everyone, look at the show notes because you'll see all the connection points, which are very important.
There's some other work from another professor at Lancaster University called The Good Dividends, which is like from a very business, it's from the business school at Lancaster University, this work has come out of. And instead of just having one dividend, which is financial, they've got 6, which does include a financial one. Yeah. There's one for nature and community. There's one for social. There's one for how your brand, your standing, how you're seen, your social standing. It's got another word. and I can't quite get the word of it, and other things. So that's really interesting that can we report or not on just one dividend, but 6 dividends? Because if
Yeah.
they're all healthy, then you're for sure flourishing as an organization.
Let's not
Um,
forget one of them. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And yeah, just finance is just part of that, but not, and of course, you want a flourishing,
Yeah.
financially viable, profitable company because so much can happen when that's going on. When you've got excess, what do you do with your excess? What can that bring to life? Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great. So I've circled it, and I don't think I've ever recorded a podcast and taken so many notes. So I will add that in so much detail here. That's why I keep glancing down, which is a good thing. I've circled prioritize people and the planet. So that's the core of things, isn't it? Prioritizing people
Yeah.
and the planet. Or maybe anything to add around that?
Both, there's a word that crops up when you begin to talk about regenerative is extractive, and we talked about it, came up earlier in the conversation,
Yes.
is that when you get a feel of what this word extractive means and the fact that we have been raised in quite an extractive culture world, especially Western economies and what have you, there is something. Ask me the question again. Oh my God, it just fell out my brain.
No,
Sorry,
don't worry, because
it sounds sometimes.
Priorities, people and the planet, which order?
Oh yeah. So we have been extracted from. So when I used to work, I have worked in companies, but I've been self-employed for quite some years now. I was often a cog in a wheel that was replaceable. So when I went on maternity leave, somebody took my job on. I was superfluous.
Familiar.
And a more regenerative approach to that, and one that I do see because I teach leadership and support leadership programs in some more regenerative style companies. They go, once we've got this right person in this company, what's the long-term path for them in this company? 5 years, 10 years time, talent management, succession planning. They're looking like 10 years into the future, going, where might this person be right now in 10 years time? Is there a path through for them, given if they want to grow and take on more responsibility or do something different? They're thinking in 10-year cycles, not a year cycle. And they're going, once we've got a good person in our company, how do we keep them here? How do they enjoy their work and we get the benefit of them enjoying their work because they're doing good work? And that's an example of a company putting people first. How do we make it great to work here? And how do we know that they're going to, what's it look like for them to be working here for many years? And that's a big change I've seen in my lifetime, is that often people were in companies for 30, 40 years. They started there at 18 and then they retired, they worked there and then retired like in their 60s. And then that all evaporated, certainly through the 90s. And I moved jobs every 2 years. That was partly because I wanted to and I could, but there was no, how do we keep, there was one company, I loved working there. They had some reorganization. There was nowhere they could place me. I wasn't made redundant. I chose to leave because my workplace got relocated. And I was like, I don't want to work in where you're moving me to. I want to stay where I am because I've got a good life here. And they didn't see me as somebody valuable in the organization. Let's have a conversation about what that might look like. And so that's the personal bit.
Sorry, no, just sorry to interrupt, but it also makes economic sense because the cost of recruiting and it's just
it's huge. Yeah, staff turnover. And then the on ripple effects of people coming in and out of teams the whole time, people getting relationship building. It's I link a little bit with my work I do of neurodivergent people in the workplace. It's socially exhausting for some people when they have a high turnover of people.
So
Building those relationships are tough. Yeah.
It's bad. And as you say, the social side, not productive for that individual, each individual or the business. And,
yeah.
But how refreshing to look at an employee and have a plan for them, as you say, if they want it.
Yeah. And if it's not the right fit, that's fine. They go find some other work. And then there is this push towards or pull or wish for people to work in organizations that are impactful. They've got some kind of purposefulness behind them, not just making money. or providing whatever.
Thank you. Before I ask my end of podcast questions, which are those famous, you're on a deserted island.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, thank God, no people. I'm very happy.
There's lots of wildlife walking around. You've got your trees and you've got the fish in the sea. Food. What item of food would you take with you if you could take one extra thing to whatever you could hunt together?
It'd have to be dark chocolate.
Yeah, I can empathize with that. Right, great. We'll move on. Now, I've got a special question for you. What luxury, what would you consider a luxury? What luxury would you take?
Yeah. Because I'm in my winter, I just want to hide under a duvet phase at the moment. I'd be like,
Have a duvet.
comfortable to sleep in. Yeah.
That's good. Now, my question is
Sunscreen.
sunscreen. We'll go with the duvet, like sunscreen. So if you've got a toolbox, imaginary toolbox, which tool would you take with you for your deserted island?
Can I have a Swiss Army knife as my tool?
Oh, clever. Well, love that. Love that. Swiss Army. And I'll give you the traditional fourth question, which would be, what piece of music would you take to play it? We can play it. We won't work out how, but what music would you take with you?
It would probably be some Ludovico Einaudi.
Fantastic. All right, then. Catherine, thank you so much for joining me today. Lots for people to absorb, loads of information there, and very thought-provoking. We can make a difference as an individual in our work. And if those listening, if you're an employee, take some of these ideas and suggest them to management. Why not? There's lots of fantastic takeaways and positive action. Catherine, any final word from you? Parting sentence or two?
I wonder whether it's a question, actually. It's a couple of questions. So just
Go for it.
your energy. Are you living and working from a place of depletion or vitality? And thinking about the decisions you're making at work, yeah, what might nature have to say about this decision? What might they bring?
That's a great
Might nature
compass.
say?
Thank you. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. And don't forget, listeners, viewers, to look in the show notes, look up at Carbon 350 and everything else that we've mentioned. We'll put the links there. And where's the best place to find you, Catherine? Through your LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's the best place because I'm a startup, not everything. It's not like I've got a great ecosystem of a brilliant. My website's in progress and should be arriving fairly soon, but you won't find a website just yet. But so, yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. So please do. Happy to.
And also, if other people in a startup or a new path, new business, it doesn't have to all be in place before you get going. A great point to absorb. Yes. Catherine, once again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.